I also have the honor and privilege to talk about somebody special tonight. We have heard about her already. Several of us are familiar with her. She was born in Yaoundé, Cameroon, and her childhood was spent in several African countries: Gambia, Senegal, Nigeria, Democratic Republic of Congo, and attended schools in all of these countries, including ISI in Ibadan. She proceeded to the UK, where she did A-level, advanced level. That was at the Abbott Bromley School in Staffordshire, UK, graduating with distinctions in biology and chemistry. And our special person graduated with MBBS at our College of Ibadan in 1986. She served as a house officer at UCH and subsequently came to the United States. She completed residency in internal medicine and also went ahead to do fellowship in nephrology at University of Illinois, Chicago, right here, down the street. And her career and education has exposed her to several facets of the American healthcare system. She worked at the university hospital. She worked at the VA. She was exposed at a large county hospital and also had experience at an FQHC center serving the underserved. And then she joined the community clinic in Southwest Georgia, nephrology, with a team of about 11 providers, and ran the sole nephrology practice in that town in Georgia. After spending time in all of these areas, she was recruited as the chief of hospital medicine at Aurora Healthcare in Wisconsin, where, with her expertise, was able to grow the department and led the team through the COVID pandemic period while the group continued to grow. In 2022, she was appointed the vice president of a hospital-based specialty with Advocate Aurora Medical Group, with responsibilities in clinical medicine, quality, safety, innovation, engagement of 1,400 clinicians. And she loves education. All this while, she proceeded to get an MBA. She also proceeded to get a Master of Applied Science in Population Health at the Bloomberg School of Public Health at Johns Hopkins University. In 2025, Dr. Britto, I said her name already. I was going to leave it to the end. But I told you already, we already know who I'm talking about. So she is currently part of the National Inpatient Medical Director team at United Healthcare. I didn't know we work at the same company until now. Now, she's so passionate about ICOMA. I know many of us, including myself, I'm standing here today because of a personal call that this is ICOMA, this is what it's about, we need you to join, we need you to participate, and you just can't tell her no. And from what we've heard tonight, as President Dr. Modupe Shokunbi mentioned, that she has been involved with our association right from the inception. She designed a lot of the structures that we're still using till today, the financial, the meeting structure, all of those things that she put together, even when there was no WhatsApp and communication wasn't as easy as we do now. And she has maintained that energy, being involved with the endowment fund and even the building project at UCH. She's a member of the building committee. And should I go on? I can keep reading everything here. I'm just done with page 1. There's so much to say about Dr. Britto. So it's a honor and privilege, and we're so happy that she is our distinguished alumnus of ICOMA NA 2025. Please welcome Dr. Titilola Britto.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you, Dr. Akintilo, for that wonderful, flowery introduction. Am I going to be able to see here? Let's see. I know I'm on the screen, but I can't. Is it on Emily's computer? It's here. Okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for coming tonight. ICOMA is my favorite organization. I was very excited back in the day when I was told that we were getting together to try and put together an alumni association, and I've tried to be involved as much as sort of time and family would allow. I was taken aback, actually, and quite surprised when Dr. Shokunbi called me earlier in the year and told me I was going to be the distinguished speaker. I've come to many of these events, and obviously, you know, Dr. Olokpade, Professor Olokpade, she set the standard. You know, Yele Aluko was here, Ola Akimbobwe, you know, Barry Shogade. So I was waiting for them to tell me, you know, okay, who have you guys decided on this year? And I'm humbled, and I stand on the shoulders of giants. You know, I'm going to stand on existing protocols and thank all of our past presidents, our board of trustees, Professor Famuyiwa, Professor Akimbobwe, and everyone for being here. Couple of shout outs. First of all, great UITs. Great UITs. Great UITs. Thank you. That's more like it. Now, a couple of shout outs. First of all, to my 1986 classmates, MBBS, BDS 1986. Thank you all for being here. It's wonderful to have you all here. My second group are what I call my Chicago peeps. Those of us who are here between, I wasn't here yet, but 88 and about 95 in Chicago, you know yourselves. Thank you, thank you. So, you know, when Dr. Akintilo was reading all that stuff, life is one of those things where you just keep going. Last but not least, my Milwaukee people are here. I saw them. Thank you all for coming. I really appreciate you guys. Life is one of those things where something comes up and you do it, and it sort of moves you to the next stage. I can tell you that there's nothing I've done in my career that I imagined that I would be doing when I left Ibadan. I'm one of those people who, when I entered secondary school, around Form 3, they told me there was something called O-level. I said, okay. So I focused on that. After the O-level, they said there's something called A-level. I said, okay. I focused on that one. Then they said you have to fill a form so you can enter university. So I was in England. I asked for the JAM form. I mailed it to Nigeria. You know, I was not really interested in the OCA form because England was too cold. I was like, I'm going back to UI. So every stage, some time through part one, they told me there's something called second MB. I said, okay. Let's let me focus on that one so that I can get to the next stage. So you don't always have to have a grand plan. Just figure out what the next hurdle is and focus on that and get over it. But I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey. I hope at least some of our younger colleagues can get some nuggets. Are you seeing my beautiful splash of rust and gold? Thank you. All right. Well, I'm going to tell you a little bit about my ancestors. On my father's side, we're a very interesting lot. Incidentally, my father, His Excellency, Ambassador Gbadebo Oladeyinde George, retired, is turning 95 tomorrow. And thank you. So at the conclusion of events this evening, we're going to sleep a little close to the airport so that we can jump on a plane and go and celebrate with him. His great uncle was a fellow named James George, who's not on the slide, but he was the brother of Odefunmilayo George. The family is originally from Agoba. They're thought to have migrated down from Oyo to Egbaland, and eventually to Ologbowo. Chief James, who was my great-great-uncle, was actually kidnapped and put on a slave ship. Fortunately for him, slavery had been abolished, and the British Navy rescued him and put him down in Freetown. But he was 14 or 15, didn't speak a lick of English. And so, it took him a while to get organized, and about 40 years, he showed up back in Abeokuta. And his younger brother, Odefunmilayo, had kind of, taken over. But they got along well. Odefunmilayo decided he was going to change his name to George as well. And half of the family are Oshobas, half are George. Some people use Oshoba George, but here we are. So Pa Odefunmilayo was running a business in Abeokuta, and great-uncle James was running a business out of Pacific House in Ologbowo. And my great-grandfather, Daniel Otekpola George, was one of his youngest children. I think he was the 15th out of 16 children. But his mother was a very interesting lady. Caroline Ayodele was the daughter of Ajayi Ogboriefon. And for those of you who know Ibadan history, Ajayi Ogboriefon was the Balogun of Ibadan. He was a very fierce warrior. The reason he has that name, Ogboriefon, is because they were fighting the Efon people. And he snuck around behind one of these, the F4 warrior had 2 guns. He would shoot one, his assistant was reloading the other one, shoot the second one. And so Ajayi snuck around behind the guy, shot him dead, cut his head off, and brought his head back. So he's now known as Ogboriefon. So they made him the Balogun of Ibadan, and he was very instrumental in preventing the raiding of Yoruba land by Fulani raiders. So whenever you see those fierce streaks come out in me, you know that it is Ogboriefon's genes that are carrying me. So my grandfather, Gabriel Olanrewaju George, I did not meet him. He passed away before I was born, and then my dad. On my mother's side of the family, they're originally from Ikpesi in Akoko Southeast of Ondo State. But my grandfather, who was a catechist at St. Peter's Church, Aremo, moved to Ibadan very early on. And my mother's always very proud to say that she was born at Adeoyo Hospital, because in that generation, not a lot of people were born in the hospital. But I think my grandparents had several children die in infancy, so the man boned that from now on, when his wife is giving birth, she has to go to the hospital. But my mother was the first. They doted on her, made sure she had a good education, and my mother is an alumnus of St. Anne's School in Ibadan. My maternal grandparents, Mama and Papa, were really great. This is not their house, but they lived in a house that looked just like this in Aremo. And when we would visit them, there were, the goats running around between the houses. Once there was a duck that chased us a lot, but the duck was dinner eventually. Mama and Papa had a lot of children sent to them from Ikpesi to raise, and I think at my grandmother's funeral, there were 26 of, they call them Mama's children because they just live with her, finish elementary school and secondary school. There were 26 canopies of all the different children that she had raised that they had sent from the village in Ikpesi. So all this is to, I'm trying to dispel the myth that I am an ajebota. I am not an ajebota. Not really. My grandfather had a Dane gun, which was behind the door of the bedroom where we slept. And we tried to play with that thing. It was too heavy to carry. We know all about chamber pots. You know, the bathroom and the pit latrine were at the back of the house. And there were always numerous cousins. And yes, I have slept on an eni, a mat on the floor. So visiting my grandparents was always a lot of fun. And very, very fond memories. They spoilt us rotten. My paternal grandparents passed away before I was born. There are a lot of very significant dates here. My grandfather died on June 16th. My younger brother was born on June 16th. My grandmother was born on June 22nd, which is tomorrow. It's also my father's birthday. So her eldest son was born on her own birthday as well. And so, in fact, there have been other incidents in the family. And one of my father's favorite uncles, grandma's youngest brother, I remember when he passed away, the only convenient day to have his funeral was June 22nd. And they actually called my dad and he gave them his blessing and his permission. So, what else? Interesting people, these judges. Here we go. That's Ma and Pa over the years. The blue dress with the stripes, that was actually my mom 10 years ago on her 80th birthday. And wow, sorry. I don't know what this thing is doing, but we're going to get it back. It is, let me do that and that. Okay. So just through the years with my father's career, they've been, in many, many parts of the world. And, it's certainly been a joy to have them see all of their children grow up and be successful. And it's been a joy for us to continue to have them here with us. So my life, well, my father was working in the service of our federal government. He started out actually as a radio announcer. He worked for Radio Nigeria at a time pre-independence and just afterwards. And so people who are old enough remember hearing on the radio, "This is the news," read by Dende George. He was then recruited to join the Foreign Service, as a result of which I was born in Yaoundé. At 10 months, they went off to England because my father was doing a course at Oxford for Foreign Service officers. Then when he was ripe from that, they sent them to Bathurst, Gambia, where my sister Bola was born. We spent a year there, and then we moved to Dakar, Senegal, where I started school in a French school. And I remember nothing. I have a really lovely French accent, and I can say things like, "Oh, je suis très heureux à vous présenter ce soir." But that's about it, I had a brother born in Dakar. He died in infancy. And then we moved to Lagos, where Dio was born. And that was in 1968. And then in 1970, we moved to Kinshasa, Zaire, where we spent 4 years. And so I went to 2 schools, the Zaire British Association School, which only went up to primary 4. And then the American School of Kinshasa, which went from K to 12. That was my first experience of some of the unreasonableness of the American education system that some of you have come into contact with when you're trying to get your children. I was 8 years old, and I had finished primary 4. I went to Sunday school, and I played with all these kids in the 4th grade, and everybody was going to the 5th grade. And we got to the American school and they said, she's 8. She needs to be in the 3rd grade. My father said no. So they said, okay, we'll test her. So I did the test. I passed it, they weren't happy. So we have to test her again. So I did the 2nd test. At which point we used small leg and called the American embassy. Say, what are you people doing? Anyway, that was how I got into primary 5. But it was a strange experience. Sometimes our kids are... I was very bright. In class, put my hand up, nobody will call my name. After about 3 months, I was like, okay, let me just be doing the work. And Ajayi Oguri first child, I was okay. It's like, they're not going to kill my spirit like this. So, but I was happy to return to Nigeria. These are just pictures. I'm one of those people who thinks Africa is incredibly beautiful. I very often give a talk called The Africa I Know and Love to people who don't know enough about Africa. And these are some of my slides. So these are street scenes from Yaoundé, from Banjul, which is right there on the ocean. It's a strip of land in the middle of Senegal. Dakar has wonderful beaches, and if you've never been, fantastic food. Their baguette is almost better than the baguette you get in France. This is Congo. Congo was interesting. 4 years. Mobutu Sese Seko was president. At some stage while we were there, he changed the name of the country to Zaire. He said everybody should get an indigenous name. So my friend Margaret Lutete became Lutete Ndangi. And he himself became, from Joseph Désiré Mobutu, became Mobutu Sese Seko Kukungbendu Wazabanga, which we all had to learn. The national anthem changed, and so we forgot the words of Debout Congolais, Congolais, and we started singing Zaïrois dans la pays retrouvé. So children are very obedient. They do what you ask them to do. So I went to the American School of Kinshasa. So with all this traveling, I had been in Corona, Victoria Island for like 2/3 of primary 1. Then I went to the Zaire British Association School, formerly the Congo British Association School, and I got a British accent. Then I ended up in this place, and I had a twang. My dear, when I came back to Nigeria, that thing lasted 3 days. It went away. It went away. I have a long and wonderful relationship with the town of Ibadan. It is where my grandmother grew up, my grandparents lived. It's where my mother grew up. I went to school there. I went to international school, and I went to the University of Ibadan, and I did house job there. In my lifetime, I've lived in Nigeria for 16 years, and 11 of them were in Ibadan. And so it's the place I know best in the whole country. And as John Pepper Clark, your Anna, when he met your aunt, he was waxing lyrical about the town where he met her. I actually learned this poem from my husband, who did more African literature in school than I did. Ibadan, running splash of rust and gold flung and scattered among 7 hills, like broken china in the sun. And I've climbed all those okes, Makpo, Bola, Oke, Ado, all of them, know them well. The international school was a wonderful experience. We came back from Kinshasa, and I was in primary 6, and every child in Nigeria had done common entrance. And they knew that they had already been in daily times, knowing which school they were going to. And I was sort of stuck in limbo. Fortunately for us, Canon Iliomade had come to an international schools conference in Kinshasa about 2 years prior. And he was wined and dined. And as a result, Fatou Freeman and Gloria Freeman, the 2 daughters of the Liberian ambassador in Kinshasa, ended up in ISI. Kola Ogunsulure, the son of the Nigerian ambassador in Kinshasa, ended up in ISI. My sister, Yewande George, ended up in ISI. And he was like, I can't take you without you doing the exam, so come and do the entrance exam. So we drove to Ibadan, and I saw this wonderful entrance to this university, this lush green, looking at Trenchard Hall. In those days, Queen Elizabeth Hall had very nice white paint. And then we went around this winding Bath Road, and you got to this tree-lined drive in ISI with soccer fields on the right and the tennis courts on the left. And I just fell in love. I was like, okay, yeah, I'm cool with this place. That's fine. So I did the entrance exam, and they took me. I don't know how I performed, though, but they took me. And thus began my sojourn. These are some of my favorite teachers. Where's Ife? Mr. I.G. Ikiobio, otherwise known as 101, that was the license plate of his car, is Ife's dad. I didn't meet Ife till medical school, but she immediately had status. Once I heard she was Mr. Ikiobio's daughter, she was just elevated. Mr. Fajembola was a wonderful housemaster. I was not a quiet, sedate child, and Mr. Fajembola gave me the toughest punishment I've ever done, which was empty the fish pond by yourself. By the time I realized that this teacher I loved so much and I knew loved me, gave me that kind of punishment in the hot sun, I changed my ways. Other favorites, Mrs. Oseni, who was our PE teacher of blessed memory, Mrs. Inanga, Amorel Inanga, who taught us music and is beloved by all, Mrs. Titilola, whose daughter Helen also went to UI, and Mrs. Susan, known as Auntie Susan Adelaja, who taught us French. But wonderful people, they nurtured us as if we were their own children. And I was never homesick, because A, I made lifelong friends, and B, the teachers just treated us as if we were their own. That's my Form 2 class, and I have no idea where I am. I think I'm second row, second on the right, second from right there, next to Stewie Adeyemo. All right. So anyway, ISI is a lot of fun. It's a co-ed school. They have a disco every other Saturday. It's easy to be distracted if you're not focused. I was focused-ish, but my father thought, that we should have the experience of an English education. And I have to give it to my parents that they squeezed and scrimped every penny to try and get us the best education that they could. So I went to, it was then called the School of St. Mary and St. Anne in Abbots Bromley. There were no boys and there was no disco. We were 3 in physics class, had to miss class, 5 in chemistry class, and 12 in biology. So in physics and chemistry, I was always in the front row because there was only a front row. But the teachers were fantastic. So I endured the going to church 3 times a week, the cold, and all the other things because I knew I was getting a quality education. And then I learned how to speak Queen's English again. So, it's quite useful. While I was in ISI, my last year, my father was posted to New York when we were in Form 2. And we had a family meeting, and we told him we were refusing to go back into the American education system. And he agreed to allow us to stay in ISI and not continue. They were there for 2 years, and then he got posted to Luanda, where he was there for so long that the ambassador who's been there the longest becomes the dean of the diplomatic corps. And my father was El Decano, and we all learned Portuguese. Angola had serious problems at that time, and one of them was landmines, and Diana Spencer, after she married the Prince of Wales, was very involved in making sure that as many landmines as possible got cleared up in susceptible places. So moving on to Ibadan, and there are a number of things that started to happen when I got into university. that make you understand that divine intervention sometimes controls your life, and we are not the ones in charge. And it doesn't matter which God you pray to. I think as we get older, we start to understand some of these things. Got to UI, loved it, and part 2, just before we were to have second MB exams, for which many of us were not ready, there was some sort of riot, and they threw us all out of school. 2 things happened. One, it gave me extra time to study. But the second was that I was homeless. My aunt and uncle who live in Ibadan had traveled to Kenya, where uncle was working. My grandmother was out of town. And they had nowhere to go. And Emma F. Young, where's Ekaite? Ekaite's older sister was my roommate. She said, we'll go to Tosan's place at Female Annex. I had never met Tosan before. But I followed them. And Tosan and her roommate, Leila Ogumba, took us in. Emma went to Calabar after 3 weeks. I stayed with them for almost 3 months. And that's how Tosan and I became lifelong friends. Because, I lived with them. I got to know everybody in that class, Margaret Wilson, everybody in the class of 83. They all became my big sisters. I was living in Female Annex. And Tosan and I have been firm friends since then. So I think God just worked and put us together. And I had extra time to study biochemistry, so it was very helpful. We moved over to UCH, lots of fun. Clinical school was fun. We had exceptional teachers, and you're all familiar with the places that we go to, Igbora, Aro, neuropsychiatric, etc. Dr. Famuyiwa was one of the nice guys, and I'm always grateful to him for that. He treated us like just nice, normal, decent children. There were some people who were more scary. They shall remain nameless. But thank you, sir. We appreciate the kindness then and now. So graduated. Graduated in 1986 with these superb people here, and served house job at UCH. After house job, I knew I wanted to go abroad. I wasn't very keen on youth corps, but I ended up getting a job at a place called Kelu Specialist Hospital in Lagos. And Dr. Ogunkelu, who ran that hospital, had done some of his cardiology training in the States. He lent me books to read for MGMS. He taught me how to read EKGs. And when I was leaving, he said, Titi, find me somebody to work. And I found Phila, David Hart of blessed memory. So David took my place at that clinic. And by the time we both finished there, Dr. Ogunkelu has been hunting for UI graduates to hire ever since. He came to my wedding. I finished working with Dr. Ogunkelu in 1989. I got married in 2002. He got on a plane from Nigeria and came to my wedding in Albany, Georgia. And while I was working in Buffalo, I met a young man, Fobi Gbadebo, who's class of 91, I think. And Fobi was doing a fellowship then in child psychiatry. And he disappeared one Christmas. I knew I was going to Nigeria. So I called him a couple. I'm like, Fobi, I hope, you're okay, and, armed robbers didn't waylay you in Nigeria. Just call me when you get back so I know you're okay. So he came back. He said, Titi, sorry, I just got back. He said, I got married. I said, congratulations. I didn't even know you had a girlfriend. He said, my mother-in-law wants to talk to you. I said, who's your mother-in-law? He said, Mrs. Ogunkelu. So that was how we reconnected again. And this is actually my husband. This is Fobi Gbadebo. Association that has continued to this day. Thank you. I call this my jackpot transition My father was at the time working in Canada, and so I left Nigeria and spent time in Canada doing the exams. And then I became, I did population health, so now I know about, what's it called? Social determinants of health. I didn't know I was homeless, but I was couch surfing. So my first stop was couch surfing with my uncle in Maryland. And then I couch surfed a little bit with some classmates in New York. And then I couch surfed with a good friend, Rosemary Duro-Dola, whose father was running the Institute of Child Health at UCH at the time. And then I couch surfed over to Tosan's couch again. She was doing her master's, MPH, in Yale, and I stayed with her until I couch surfed over to BC's house when we started residency in Chicago. University of Ibadan and the College of Medicine provided me with many, many hosts. Had a lovely time in residency. I did my residency at the University of Illinois in Chicago. It was very robust training. Dr. Shola Olokpade was one of my pulmonary attendings. Also did a fellowship there in nephrology. Dr. Preston Okoli was one of my senior fellows. And I got to do research with Dr. John Dogiders, who's the author of the Handbook of Dialysis. So we got very, very good training that prepared us for practice. I had the lovely J1 visa, and God was at work again. I sent out 200 job applications and got no responses. In those days, they were looking for people who had just done primary care, and they didn't want someone who had done a fellowship. And so there's a clinic called Geneva B. Scruggs Community Healthcare Center in Buffalo, New York. And I had sent them my CV. And the medical director, who was a family practice guy, was looking for a primary care family practice person, kind of tossed it aside. On the day after Thanksgiving, I decided to call the office of the Association of Community Healthcare Centers in New York City. And the only person in the office that day was the executive director of that association. And she and I had a wonderful conversation, and I explained who I was and the kind of work I was looking for, etc., etc. And she called the administrator of the clinic, Michael Ezie, who's a wonderful man, Nigerian. He's married to an American doctor. And Michael called me, and he brought me into Buffalo for an interview and offered me a job. And that was the only interview and the only job offer I got for my J1 waiver. Otherwise, I would have been in Lagos working for Dr. Nkelu. So I worked there for 3 years and then decided that I needed to go back to nephrology. Again, things work for a reason. I interviewed in several places, and there was a practice in Richmond that I thought I wanted to join. But I had also interviewed in Albany and liked that practice. The guys in Richmond sent me a contract. I was living in an apartment building, and the tipsy lady in the office, my FedEx letter from the Richmond people fell behind a cabinet and some boxes. And I felt like I hadn't heard back from them, when the interview had been so promising. So I decided to accept the job in Albany. And sometimes that's divine intervention, because there's no other reason for that. Albany was good to me. I met my husband in Georgia. Got married in Albany. Mr. Ayodele was born in Albany. And it was a wonderful place to practice. I was very accepted by the town and the medical community, and lots of fun. When Mr. Ayo was about a year old, I did one weekend call where I left at 5 a.m., I came back at 2 a.m., and I did that for 3 days. And I never saw the baby awake, it was just there in the crib sleeping. So it occurred to me that lifestyle was not the right lifestyle for somebody with a young child. And so I decided to become a hospitalist. And this was my team. I was a happy hospitalist at Redmond Regional Hospital in Rome for about 2 years. And then I had a health thing come up, And when I came back from that health thing, I was not as energetic as I had been in the past, but there was also the need for somebody to take over as medical director at Cartersville Hospital, which was exactly 25 minutes from my house, as opposed to Rome, which was an hour from my house. And even though I loved Rome, I accepted the job in Cartersville. And this is my team in Cartersville. We liked to celebrate a lot. I'll talk a little bit about the health thing, because it's one of those zebras where, unfortunately, people tend to catch the diseases they've studied. So when I was leaving Albany, my blood pressure was high, and I thought, I'm stretched, I'm working too hard, there's all kinds of stuff going on. And, you have these nice blood pressure pills that combine 3 medicines in 1 tablet. So I was only taking 2 or 3 tablets. I thought, no problem. And I went to Moonlight somewhere, and someone said, are you getting your CT scan? I said, what CT scan? They said, oh, the cardiologist just bought a machine for coronary calcium screening. And they're just doing it on everybody so that they can read your calcium score. And if they get certified for 25 readings, then, they're okay. I said, okay, free scan. I'm tired, let me go and do scan. So I did scan, I went home. About 3 weeks later, I came to work. They said, the radiologist is looking for you. I said, what happened? I called him, he said, there's a mass in the mediastinum. I said, you mean a patient? I saw. He said, well, what are you saying? And he said, no, your scan, your coronary calcium. I said, I saw the cardiologist. He told me my coronaries were clean. He said, oh, your coronaries are fantastic, but you have a 9-centimeter mass in your mediastinum. It's very vascular. I've never seen anything like this before. So I collected the copy of the scan, and I was 2 weeks from doing nephrology recertification. So I actually took the disc, I threw it in the trunk of my car. I went home, I read for nephrology, did the exam. Then after the exam, I now took the disc and showed it to the radiologist. I showed it to the cardiac surgeon at my hospital. He didn't know what it was. So we took it to radiology. They all looked at it. They said, come back in an hour. So they sent it all over to their friends. And when we came back, they said, this is a paraganglioma. It is an extra-adrenal pheochromocytoma. And we did some blood tests, and my catecholamines were 10 times the upper limit of normal. So, I went to go and see them in the Mayo Clinic. And a very nice endocrinologist, Dr. Dana Erickson, she looked at me and said, this thing has to come out. I said, I know. She sent me to Dr. Thomas Bauer, who's a very nice vascular surgeon. He says, this thing has to come out. I said, I know. He said, I just need to let you know you're going to have a lot of post-op pain. I said, okay, no problem. So my son was 4. This thing was wrapped around my spinal artery, and it was wrapped around my celiac artery. And I had a 7-hour surgery. The 3 people that sat with my husband in the waiting room, Dr. BCPS, Dr. Fumi Hastrop, who couldn't be here tonight, and my cousin Kayode Williams. And they sat with Rotimi for 7 hours while I had this surgery. I woke up, I wiggled my toes, they wiggled. I said, okay, they didn't cut my spinal artery. I can manage if I can't eat, but I want to walk. So it just gave me, I had bilateral chest tubes, I had chylothorax, I was on low-fat diet, no food diet, NPO. I went to sleep and they did a pleurodesis, and I woke up with no pain meds on board, and that happened 3 or 4 times, and it was quite the experience, but it gave me a good understanding, which I had before, of what patients go through in the hospital and how important it is to listen to patients. And I've been a lifetime advocate for patient experience and us listening to the patients ever since then. A lot of the time we are focused on the thing that might kill the patient, but the patient has constipation or they have a headache or whatever it is, and they want you to focus on that too. So it started my journey on educating patients about patient experience. But it certainly changed the way that I take life and health for granted. And I'm very grateful to be standing here today. Because if that hadn't been discovered, they would just have said, Titi had a big stroke. What happened? So that was very interesting. This is my team in Wisconsin. That's me all dressed up in our PPE during the COVID. I want to recognize some gentlemen in the corner there. So I had a team of hospitalists, and when COVID hit us, we had what they called surges. There were patients coming out the wazoo, boarding in the ER everywhere. Dr. Lanre Shitu, who's not an alumnus, but is a proud alumnus of the University of Ilorin Medical School, runs a locum agency that provides us with high quality, smart, hardworking, conscientious hospitalists. And they saved us. He and Dr. Saladi, who's his competitor, but they work together. Larry, where are you? Thank you. And so one of my favorite guys from his team is Bayo Lawal, who is actually an alumnus of the College of Medicine. And I want to thank you guys again for all the help that you gave us during the pandemic, because I don't think we would have survived it without you guys. And whenever we hit rock bottom, Larry or his wife would suit up and come and work alongside with us. So we really have a wonderful community in Wisconsin, and certainly couldn't have managed without them. These are some of my mentees. Teresa Sullivan is a hospitalist who is now a medical director, and next to her is Jaya Fukan, who started out as a hospitalist when I came, became a medical director, and she's now a CMO of one of our newest hospitals. And Paul Coogan was getting an award. He was our head of ER. He turned 60 just before me, and he was like, Titi, I'm done. And now he works a few shifts a year. But we have a really great team of hospitalists. I was very fortunate when I moved to Wisconsin to be able to help to standardize a lot of processes, and the team was very receptive. And so, all the physicians in our community know that when they get a discharge summary from us, all the information is in the right place. We also found a way to disseminate information very quickly so that best practices, it takes about a week. Everybody knows about it at all 16 hospitals, and they're in. So did a lot of work with physician leadership training with our medical directors. I don't know. Adult education. Well, again, I have a friend. We're friends now, Benny. Benny was the chief financial officer at Cartersville Medical Center. And we had a discussion one day. It was a discussion about something financial. And Benny was trying to tell me how to do my job. I was so annoyed. Ogbori F4 came out. I couldn't work anymore. I went home that day, and I applied for MBA. I was like, whatever it is this man is talking about, I can do it. So that was how I ended up with the George Washington School of Business, completed the MBA, and one of my classmates was Teju Ogunrinde, class of 1987, and so we graduated together. That was fun. I think I was having a midlife crisis during the pandemic, but also I was thinking about all of the things that are wrong with our healthcare system here in America, which I've had a first row seat seeing. And so I decided to do a degree in population health, which I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I graduated last year, so there we go. And I've promised Mr. Britto I'm no longer going to school. Nothing more than a 5-day course. Becoming a leader for me was very gradual. Obviously, I didn't leave Ibadan saying, hey, I'm going to be in charge of 1,400 people one day. It was very gradual. It wasn't intentional. When I was a nephrologist, all the nephrologists here know that we're very careful with what we do in nephrology, because if the water isn't purified right, if your electrolytes aren't in the right concentration, etc., you can have a disaster and several very ill or very dead patients in one day. And so we're used to really focusing on safety. And I think that mindset helped me really approach solving problems. I liked the idea. I started to read about patient safety and some of the accidents that have happened to patients in the hospital and the things that we need to do to prevent those. And started to get a safety focus, understand how to work up sentinel events, understand how to reduce variability, understand how to create a safe environment so that if something bad does happen, you're not blaming the person. You're sitting them down and saying, tell me the steps that we usually go through for this thing, and tell me the steps you went through, and let's figure out where the error is so that we can fix it and this doesn't happen to someone again. When you have that kind of focus in your organization, patients are a lot more safe. And I've been very fortunate to work in many organizations that operate that way. And the last thing is temperament. I had a friend who was a surgeon, loved the guy, but his way of complaining was to go in the CEO's office and bang on the table. Not very effective. And so very early on, I realized that just having an even temperament and really creating an area of psychological space where people feel safe to discuss even the tough things makes you valuable as a leader because people aren't afraid to bring things to you. So that was, one of the things. This is just something I tell folks that I mentor. Once you get into a leadership position, a lot of people spend their CME, they're going to another board review, go and learn how to treat atrial fibrillation again, even though you know how to treat atrial fibrillation. So there are a lot of CME courses that focus on building up leadership competencies that people can do. And these are some of the slides I gave to my mentees. I think one of the most interesting things for me was being a leader of a multi-generational workforce, because the way we baby boomers think about work is completely different from what the millennials think, and Gen Z, they are just different. They want lifestyle, they have to believe in the cause of the organization, they're just different. They work hard, but once they're off duty, they don't want to hear from you, So it was a learning curve for me. And the other thing is, I think for every generation, people have to know that you care about them. And so for my team, I always knew that, I knew when somebody had a baby, I knew if they had a loss in their family, I knew, and I reached out to them and made sure they knew that we cared, make sure their medical directors kept eyes on them and referred them to stuff. So I'm going to just skip forward. Anybody that wants to learn about leadership or wants to be a leader, give me a call. And we'll talk about that. Basically, leadership competencies are all about the ones you need to lead yourself, the ones you need to lead a team, and then the ones you need to lead an organization. Family is important, and he's taller now, but that's our pride and joy, Mr. Ayo, who also excelled at the high jump, was jumping second highest in Wisconsin last year, 6'7". This is my family of origin. I'm the second of 5 children, and over the years, different looks in different countries. This is my new family. My late mother-in-law lived till 97. And she spoiled me. My husband is the youngest, so I told them that I was her new youngest child. And he and his sisters have taken really good care of me. And Ayo's grown-up cousins all take care of him. These are my chosen family. And almost everybody in this picture is connected with UI or UCH one way or another. And yes, I do wear native every once in a while. I do. So I can just say that, I consider myself a lifelong learner. I'm curious, try and communicate effectively. If you want to do something, have the courage to make the change. have empathy and compassion for your fellow men, and practice gratitude. I'm grateful for waking up in the morning for various reasons. I'm grateful when the sun shines and I can take a walk in the sunshine. And I'm grateful for the little things and the big things. A last word about ICOMA. Everybody has talked a lot. I want to also recognize Deola. Deola was the treasurer. She was the keeper of the money. I still have that spreadsheet from 2002 to 2018. She begged and begged us to take the job away from her, and she had it for a long time. So she was instrumental in keeping things straight for us for so many years. But there's so many faces around this room of people who have given their all to this organization. Being the president of ICOMA is not an easy job. And sometimes you have to drag your friends kicking and screaming to come and help you. So I just want to say thank you to everyone. I also want to put in a plug for monthly giving. This is one of the things that we started. It makes it very easy to do. And you can imagine if you're giving $100 a month to the endowment fund and $100 a month to sponsor a student, cheaper than your car insurance, and just in perpetuity. We have more than 2,000 alumni in North America. And if even 1/3 of us are participating, we will make so much progress. So, in fact, I'm going to ask everybody who's going to take part in monthly giving to please stand up. All right, let me see you guys. Okay, those that are already doing it, stand up. Let's see you. Come on, BC. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. The two BCs I know, Deola. Okay, now I want the people who are going to join them. Or if you're going to remember us in your will, that's okay too. Aww. They're shy. Thank you, Jerry. Monthly giving. Let's get this thing going. Preston has given us a shot in the arm. We really need to get this endowment fund going again so that we can support the school in perpetuity. But I owe a lot to so many people. There are people I didn't even mention. Louis Masoge is in the corner from Canada. When he was getting married, 10 of us descended on Chike Guam's house where he was doing youth corps in Benin City, and he found a place for everybody to sleep. It's really been, this is my community. This is my chosen family, the Ibadan College of Medicine Alumni Association. And I want to thank everybody, and thank you, Dr. Shokunbi, for the honor this evening. I know I talked for a long time. So.
Wow. Wow, that's amazing life history. And I actually have a request, Dr. Britto. If you can consider writing a book. Yes, because, those of us here and the next generation can learn a lot from your history. Thank you for sharing with us tonight. And I have an award for you here. I'm going to start with this. If you permit me to. Well deserved.
Thank you.
And also there's a plaque for being the distinguished alumnus of ICOMA NA 2025.
Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. Great job.
Thank you.